Right. Today is Monday, February 10th, 2019. This is the Kubernetes CSI implementation meeting. For our agenda today, we have one remaining task for 113, which is to update our docs site, which is very out of date. Saad has a work in progress PR here. He's almost done with this. I think there's like just one or two more pages that are missing. I think at this point, we're just going to merge what we have and put it to do at the top of the pages that still need to be updated. And then we can maybe even start trying to update the remaining pages in parallel. I think I just made some minor comments, but hopefully Saad can resolve those today and then we can get these docs in.
That sounds great.
Yep. And let's see. Okay, that's 113 stuff. We can go to miscellaneous topics. PRs that need attention. I think this one is on me. Is that right, Patrick?
Yeah, it is. I think you wanted to have some other opinion, but right now it looks like you're the one who's most familiar with it.
Okay.
And I'd like to get it in because then I can proceed with updating the test suite. This pretty much is a blocker for that.
Sounds good. I will take another look at this. All right.
Thanks.
Okay, and you had an item about CSI Common.
Yeah, I noticed that when I went through our repositories that something had been created with CSI lib common without a description, without an owner, and I was wondering what it's supposed to be for. I suspect that it was created to host what's formerly known as drivers CSI common. And if that's the case, then I'm not sure whether you really should keep that code, because when I started in the middle of last year, someone said that CSI common, this whole default implementation of a CSI driver is pretty much deprecated and people should not depend on it. Perhaps that was because it was in this drivers repository. But overall, after having used this framework for writing a CSI driver, my conclusion is that it doesn't really add that much additional value. It's much cleaner to just copy some CSI driver, and the host path driver could be that example driver, and then rip out the parts that are driver specific and replace with your own code, and then just fork it. The end result is a driver with less functions, less code, easier to understand. So I would argue that we don't need that code anymore.
I always said that we never needed this. It's actually simply just to point to the interface and it's generated.
I think the only thing is there are some drivers using this one right now.
Yeah, but we just keep telling them that this drivers repository is deprecated, don't use it. And eventually just, I don't know, enforce it by deleting the code. But we should definitely not move it to a new repository. I think that seems to be the consensus then.
I think even if we remove it and we just said it's gone, when they have done a Go vendor or dep, they have the copies on their vendor. And then when they try to do it again, they'll see that it's moved. So it's okay. They'll just have to redo it.
Yeah, but if we're deprecating it, why should we even bother moving it?
No, that's what I'm saying. I agree. Let's just delete it. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to clean up the host path driver first, because it's also one of us which is still using this, I think. But I can take in an AR to either do it myself or get a colleague to do that.
Okay, sure.
This makes sense.
I'm just looking at the implementation now. I'm not actually sure what it's doing. Is it?
See, what happened was when we first started the project a long time ago, we had to, we're very new to the implementation of this, And also we thought there would be many drivers like Flex, NFS, iSCSI, and so on that would have the same boilerplate code. So to avoid that, we did this. But what happened was that other users, brand new users in development, started using this as a first step, and that was incorrect. Does that make sense?
I guess what I'm not sure about, like I'm looking at this function here. It's taking in a request and giving back a response, but it's not actually making any RPC calls. It's just like
That's right.
returning nothing.
It's just boilerplate.
Yeah, it's supposed to be embedded in your CSI driver, and because it doesn't do what you need to do, you probably override this one particular function with your own version. It's really just complicated, and I don't think it does make that much sense anymore. There are easier ways to get the same effect. So yeah, that's why we are saying it's not useful.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Unless we can like find some real usefulness for it, I wouldn't move it over.
I even think that we just, just delete the thing because we have it at different versions of releases that you can always get it back. So just get rid of it.
Yeah, so I think what we need to do first is we need to move out all of these drivers and then we can delete it.
But those drivers are not supported, like Flex, maybe Flex adapters, but HostPath is just an example. And iSCSI and NFS are not done here at all. So what is Flex adapter done here?
I think so. So there are people in the progress of moving the iSCSI and NFS to its own repo. We've also already moved the host path driver out of here to its own repo. I don't think anyone is touching Flex.
Yeah, so I think that nothing's being done in the driver's repo at all.
Well, right now, host path and iSCSI are in the progress of being moved, so it's not quite done. I think once we finish it, once we move out everything out of here, then we can deprecate this whole entire thing.
Sounds good.
I think the NFS driver is the one use the CSI common, I remember.
Yeah, but it's easy to change that. I think we should just tell people to do that or lead by example. I can do host path, for example.
Okay, that sounds great. So I think the conclusion is we're not gonna touch any of the CSI common stuff. We're also not gonna touch anything in this repository. I think.
So is this driver's repository will be kept here for historical reasons? Will always be here. But we're not going to delete the repo after moving everything out. Is that?
I'm not sure about the process. I think we will just at least put a giant deprecation notice on the whole repository. I don't know if there's like a official process on if we can delete repositories or not.
I don't think we shouldn't delete them because there might still be code out there referencing CSI common version 0.3, for example.
Yeah.
So we need to keep it for archival purposes, but we can definitely mark it deprecated.
Yeah, I mean I don't know if there's a way in GitHub to like officially deprecate or archive repositories or.
Yeah, the way I did it in driver registrar, I just put deprecate around the top. So.
And we can clean out the code, of course. So for example, host path here could already be deleted now.
Yes, that's correct.
But
like
one thing you can do is save wipe out the master branch, make the master branch have no files, but keep the other branches around.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that sounds good. I think we should already have a release on it. And there have been no changes to master since this release. So I think, yeah, that's fine. Once we move everything out, then we can just wipe out this repository. Okay, so oops, that's not the right one. let's not use. So we have to migrate all the drivers out, which is in progress. Then we can change the drivers to not use the lib common. And then we can delete the master. Empty the drivers. Okay. That sound good to everyone?
Sounds good.
All right, cool. Moving down to 114 items. So going to our, so Luis, this is your first time back. We decided to go try out this GitHub project stuff, GitHub project board, to do all our release tracking. So we have our project board here, and we can just go down our in progress stuff. So Xing, you have an update on moving the objects to beta?
Yeah, so I submitted a PR that is making all the API changes. So adding the CSI node info and CSI driver to the storage API group. So we talked about it. We want to do this in several steps, right? So this is the first step.
That's correct.
API changes. Is that David is waiting for this change? Is the main part that he's waiting for, or does he need all of those?
No, I think he just needs this part.
API? Okay.
Yeah, he just needs the API to be defined.
Okay. So there are still some test errors. Probably I will need David to help take a look, because a lot of those are from the GCE end-to-end tests. So maybe he can take.
Is this a build failure, or is it? No.
So a lot of those are from, but most of those failures are for the GCE. Not sure.
Cluster failed to initialize.
So I don't know if there's any test I need to update, or
like for just adding a new API definition. Oh, is there anything that you need to add? If you add a new API group, there might be changes you need to make to enable the API group. But here you're just extending an existing API group. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. I did make some changes, but I'm not sure if there's anything specific for the GCE, or it still could be I missed some changes in the test, but
okay. I mean, technically, like
looking at them.
If we're adding,
so I'm not adding. Yeah, I'm not really adding any groups, because there's already, the alpha. This is the beta one, right? So there's already storage beta one groups there.
Okay, we'll have to take a look, because if you're just adding a new object to an existing group and you're not actually changing any of the callers to use it, I don't feel like that should impact the cluster up, unless there was something, unless you need to do something special for, like, maybe the API server is failing to come up or something. But yeah, we should take a look at the API server logs to see if the API server actually came up correctly. Actually, I'm just doing that now. Oh, something panicked. Yeah, it looks like something. Oh, no kind CSI node info is registered for V1. So I think it's
Where, I
okay.
mean, which line you're looking
This is the Cube API server.log. So it looks like you
Mhm.
might have added the objects to the V1 type. And there's some error there. So we'll have to look
Oh,
more
this
in
one.
detail.
Oh, interesting. Why is this one still? Because I made some changes and actually this disappeared from this other log. Okay, so there was a test change that I made and then made this disappear in another log. So maybe there was another place.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
so it's like in a test specifically, I need to do something. So okay, so I'll take a look of this one. This is the, which failure is this? Is the first one? Is this the
This is just a GCE failure, I think.
GC? Okay.
Yeah. It was trying to bring up a cluster and the API server failed to come up.
Okay. Yeah, so I do see this error in another log, which I fixed. So this went away, but this one seems like it's still there. Okay, so I'll take a look.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks for working on this. Next is inline volumes.
Hey, I am working on rebasing the old PR for inline volume. So hopefully I can get that situated ASAP.
All right. And is the KEP resolved?
The KEP is mostly resolved. I need, there was like one more, actually a couple more. Every time I update it, Jordan adds something. So there's like the last comment was it is LGTM. I just have to go back and add a couple things to satisfy his responses.
Awesome. Great.
And that's it. Yeah. But heads down at this point.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Next up is migration. I guess David's not here. Deep, do you want to give an update on this?
Yes. So yeah, things are ongoing. Basically, we still have the main PRs around attach, detach, mount, unmount, and provision being reviewed.
Okay.
I recently submitted, like on Friday, a PR around the dynamic provisioning. And so Jan had a comment on, can we move the changes there into the CSI external provisioner rather than in the lib external provisioner controller? Like, there's the storage provisioner lib that's by the external guys. And then there's the CSI external provisioner, right? So I made the changes in the library because I felt like at least that needed a critical change where the provisioner that the storage class is pointing to is not going to align with the actual external provisioner that's going to provision it. Because in the migration scenarios, it's the entry provisioner that the storage class will point to, and the actual provisioner will be the CSI provisioner. So the library cannot handle that scenario. Today, it errors out. So that was sort of my main reasoning for moving the logic, that core logic and the sort of adjacent logic around it into the library. So Jan had a question on like whether we can move it. So that was sort of my point there. So if Jan is online, maybe he can take a look at the comments and go from there.
Yeah, okay. I will look at it tomorrow.
Sure, thank you.
Sure.
I also had a question on how to exactly add issues to the board, especially if they're from another.
So you just do a plus here on one of the columns, and then you copy paste the URL.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Oh, excellent. That's easy enough. Sweet. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Next up is RobLock Beta.
Yeah, I managed to connect with Sunny last week. It turns out he's been traveling, but he's back this week, and he will implement the changes we talked about last week regarding maybe stashing the loopback device path in the ID of the volume itself so that we can continue to be stateless. He thought that idea was okay, so hopefully we'll see that this week.
All right, cool. And then let's see. And then there's this issue, which I think maybe it would be good if we can try to clean up this code if possible. I think the design is pretty confusing right now.
Yeah. So I mean,
So-
I don't totally understand what's going on here because I don't. I'm gonna have to like zoom out and understand like what setup even does to get a sense of why it's doing the wrong thing. I think I agree with you. It's overly complicated, but I just don't have the background to be able to say, yeah, you're on the right track.
Okay. Yeah, maybe sync up with Masaki on this. He seems like he has a fairly good understanding of what's going on. I think the main thing I'm not sure about is if, in order to fix the CSI implementation, do we also have to sort of make changes to the basic Kubernetes RobLock design? So I CC'd Matt Wong on that. It might this might just be worth calling a meeting with all the people so we can discuss.
Yeah, if you know the people that are more familiar with this code, that would be good. I'm still not convinced that this is time urgent though, because it seems like it could be fixed later.
I guess it could. I'm just wondering if, like, I'm not sure if well, it's right now the way that it's called is kind of weird, and I'm not sure how it will actually work with like real drivers that are using this, because basically like it's calling node stage volume and node publish volume in the same call. So it's like these two calls are kind of like one of the calls is kind of useless at this
Yeah, no,
point.
I know what you're saying, but like having written a real driver and tried this and observed the correct behavior at the end of the day, like that was good enough for me. I didn't look inside the sausage.
Well, I'm wondering if like okay, we did observe correct behavior with the test we have, but I wonder if this is like there's some other use case that we're missing where this totally fails and doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because the node stage is supposed to be once per volume and node publish is once per pod. So I'm not sure like
Oh, you mean you think we might not even be meeting that requirement the way it's written now?
yeah,
Okay.
like
I
it's
see.
kind of I
All right,
think
yeah.
right
Then let's call that meeting. Let's get
sure.
the people involved that know and say, hey, we suspect that we're doing the wrong thing here, and it just works by accident because the only CSI drivers we've tested it with happen to have some workaround for this issue.
Or we're not
Intentional or no.
like testing the right use cases to uncover some issue.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I didn't realize that it actually looked like. So you're suggesting maybe if you have two different pods in the same node, we might accidentally call node stage volume twice when we're not supposed
yeah,
to.
something
Okay,
like that.
that would be
Maybe.
bad.
Could it be that the CSI spec needs to be changed so we allow no stage volume to be almost idempotent, you would think? So that
Well,
way,
it is idempotent, but still, if you call it twice, that's not a good situation because that implies that on the other side you're going to call it twice when you, or no, it implies that if you have two pods, the first one you'll call it correctly, the second one you'll call it incorrectly, but it will be harmless because it's idempotent. But then
yeah.
when you do the first detach, if you call node unstage before you're supposed to, then you cause real harm.
Also, then the harm will be on stage volume, not stage.
Correct.
Yeah. But it's
But
still
it's like a
violation of the spec.
consequence. It's kind of like a consequence of the way that the setup stuff was implemented. So, okay, let me I'll set up a meeting. Let's set up a meeting to try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, like I could modify my CSI driver to be more fragile and to blow up in this case if this is what's actually going on and test it that way. Because yeah, the fact that node stage is supposed to be idempotent means you can violate the spec and still get a good result, which is kind of bad.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. I will do that. I'll send out a doodle to all the people to see what time works best, and then I'll send out a meeting. Cool. All right, so I think those are the main two things outstanding for RobLock. I guess the other thing is, do we think we need to add more E2E tests for this? I guess we can see once we have the host path driver that supports it, we can run the tests that we have and then kind of look at that test coverage and see if it's sufficient enough.
Yeah, and any tests we add would be for both CSI RobLock and just arbitrary RobLock, right?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing CSI specific that you'd want to test.
That's
you just want
correct.
to test real scenarios.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. Next up is the external provisioner scaling issues.
So I feel the PR for the major issue that we don't retry when a user deletes PVC. It's on review. And when that gets merged, I will think about preventing leaking volume. And that could be it.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I think just for like our release criteria purposes, I think just fixing this one should be good enough. And also like did we fix the issue about like retries, too many retries or something? Someone had an issue where they tried to create like 1,000 volumes and the retries were not behaving properly.
Now the default retry is unlimited, and it's possible to set it up to whatever value you want if you have some crazy CSI driver.
Okay, cool. Who do you need to review this?
Probably Matthew.
Okay. I'll let you ping him then.
I've been off a while.
Sorry, who was speaking?
Please
Oh, you want to review this too?
try it.
Okay.
It's primary because I've been off a while. So
Okay. Let's. Are you not on this? Okay, you might not be on this thing, but okay. Sounds good. Cool. Thank you. Next up is the CI, automating the CI stuff.
Yeah, I'm coming around to your idea that we just really should be doing individual releases of each component. How much testing we do on each of those is then really up to the component owner, but we can start, I think, with applying the existing end-to-end testing, basically with an updated component. That's my latest comment, my proposal. I haven't updated the cap yet, but if you are fine with the proposed direction, I'll do a one revision of the document, and we can see how to implement that.
Okay, sounds good. I will try to take a look at that again today.
Yeah.
All right, and then I think you did you made a lot of changes to have the common build tools. Is that done?
That's currently done, but this common CI thing would be the next update to that CSI release tools. Basically having shared testing that a component can get from that repository, and when it runs in the Prow CI, then it can run a script to test itself with some common helper tools. And I just still need to figure out what those common files will be, but I think there will be something. Otherwise, it's mostly done at the moment.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Did you have something else?
I left one PR open for Luis in CSI test, so that he has a chance to see it before it gets merged. But that's really just the last open pull request.
All right, awesome.
Excellent, thank you.
All right. Next up is consistent sidecars. So this is pulling out any of the common functionality that most of the sidecars are all just copy pasting right now, and seeing if we can put that all into a common repository. So I think there's a few different items on this part. One is adding common connect logic across all the drivers. So I think we had the node and cluster driver registrars are completed. I think, Jan, you're still working on attacher and provisioner. At least there's something out here. Is there still something pending? Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, we noticed that, well, we discussed it today, that the lib, the connection code intentionally only supports Unix for the connection handling parameter. And that is because implementing it for the DNS method or prefix in gRPC would just be lots of additional effort because DNS is more complicated. And both Jan and I initially concluded that it's not worthwhile supporting. Jan was starting to think about it today and then came to the same conclusion. But we are now in the situation where the test code does TCP relies on TCP connection, so that needs to be changed.
Okay.
To Unix and then. Yeah.
Okay, so I had one follow-up question. Is that if we make this like only Unix domain sockets, does that mean that like people can't, like this code is not going to support Windows drivers?
Well, CSI is specified as using Unix domain sockets. I don't know how you would do a Windows driver at this point.
That's a good point. Let me just bring it back a little bit. When I was doing CSI tests, I have support for both Unix domain sockets and TCP sockets. And I think I still do. Anyway, I need to catch up. But one of the things that was brought up when we were trying to bring a CSI test, the CSI spec team, was that there was no need to support TCP addresses because CSI spec does not support TCP connections. It's only Unix domain socket.
The CSI spec.
Yes.
Unix.
You can look for the
okay.
CSI endpoint.
Only Unix domain sockets may be used as endpoints. But it says this will likely change in the future if we want to support non-Unix platforms.
Yeah, and if we pick something in the future for Windows, we can add support to the connection code to handle that. But right now, it's just not there.
Okay, like I do think Windows CSI drivers are going to be coming in the near future.
The biggest problem is a huge assumption, and the assumption is security. With Unix domain sockets, we can avoid a lot of security issues because you have to be on the node, and the node then has security with the, you have to be in the right group and the right owner. If we do not use Unix domain sockets, then we open a port, then we have to rethink security. And that's
isn't that a requirement on the CO to provide the security, or like no, is it really a thing on the spec that needs to provide it?
No, I mean, right now, security is pretty much bypassed, or not bypassed, just avoided because we don't open a port, right? But once we open a port on the node, then all security issues come up.
Like, what if it's
And
not, you don't have to open a global port, right? You can just open a localhost port.
you can, but that becomes now a little more difficult. You just have to then be very careful how you open your ports.
Yeah, so I think at least, like, I would imagine if, say, someone wanted to run a CSI driver on Windows, they could use the localhost port, right? Instead of a
So
Unix domain
Windows and
socket.
Windows and Server 2019 also supports domain sockets.
Oh, really?
Yes. So basically, so in Server 2016 they did not, but starting Server 2019, which SIG Windows wants to GA with, they did start supporting domain sockets. So for example, when you start off a pod in Windows starting in Server 2019, you can have volume specs pointing to a domain socket, for example. Like
Oh, okay.
right. So that simplifies things a little bit, I assume.
Okay. That's good to know. So then I guess Unix domain sockets will still work at least for the newer Windows versions. So then we can revisit if we want to support just general TCP if people need older Windows OSs. Okay. Then I guess that's fine. Seems fine for now. Let's see. Okay, so that was updating the sidecars to use Common Connect functionality. There's also having a common leader election library. I think currently we don't really have someone signed up for this. I guess, oh, actually, Xing, were you able to ask your coworker if he would be willing to take this on?
I pinned him, haven't heard from him. I think he might still be on vacation, so I need to check with him again.
Sure, no problem. And then there's this get driver name utility. It looks like this one has merged. I left one comment if we want to consider moving some other common methods like get controller capabilities.
Yeah, I found out that only get driver name is used everywhere. The rest is different, and I have a PR to move it to the util.
Okay, but wouldn't all the controllers also need to be able to query the capabilities and stuff?
Not really.
Like external attacher needs to know if the driver supports attach and
Attach and provision, they do that. That's correct. Okay, maybe I can move also that one.
yeah. I guess the other question though is like are these things like simple enough that it's okay if we just copy paste them all or
Sometimes I feel that we have to be careful how much we want to include in a generic library, because sometimes it's too simple. And I don't know how much it buys. So we just have to balance that. So I agree with what you were saying, Michelle, that sometimes we just have to be careful on how simple it is.
mm-hmm. Like for the common, like the connect stuff, that kind of makes sense because the connect things is fairly complicated. This is like a wrapper to a call, is that it doesn't really do anything really fancy.
I agree with that. I mean, the caller to this function still has to check the error, right? So it's still 3 lines that they have to add on top of the line to call is. So how much does it buy?
I don't know. Jan, do you see any much value in moving this?
Yeah, because there is also a unit test around that is copied everywhere. But again, we need to be careful because changing the libraries becomes difficult. Because if you want to fix the bug, you need to choose the library, then rebase everything, and it takes time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the same thing is if there's a bug in this, you either have to go and change it in the library, then update all the sidecars, or you have to individually update all the sidecars. So it's like it's kind of equivalent to fix the bug in this.
Yeah, I think this get driver name and maybe get capabilities could be moved to the util, but that would be all.
Okay. Like I think it might be useful to have like a wrapper function around the get capabilities so that people can just say like can just do a simple comparison to see if the driver supports their capability that they want. But
Yeah,
maybe.
sure.
Okay, sounds good. So maybe let's not update all the sidecars yet until we like decide what are all the wrapper functions that we want to move over.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Okay.
we can update all the sidecars at once.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, and then we have the work for moving all the drivers out. So looks like the fiber channel one got abandoned for some reason. And then iSCSI and NFS are in progress. Why did this one get abandoned? Unsure. Okay, we'll have to check with Medusan on that. Anyway, yeah, those are in progress. I think did we get reviewers for this? I think, Ben, you said you would review the NFS one, and I think John is going to review the iSCSI one. I think what we were missing was a reviewer for the fiber channel one. I asked Brad to try to find a reviewer for this. So hopefully they should all be accounted for. All right.
Yeah, I see that request.
Cool. Awesome. And then beyond those big items, we just have two other things currently in progress. There's a bug fix that I'm working on. I think I just need to ping someone from the node team to review this. And then Xing, you have finalized their work for the snapshotter.
Oh, that one, I think I just need to ask Jin to review it. So
Okay.
I will ping her. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think that's all we have on the agenda. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about?
Yeah, just now that I'm back, I need to continue to follow up on the CSI provisioner request that I have. If you go to the CSI external provisioner, you look at issues. There's one where we do not pass in the name UEC into the CSI driver in the context. Yeah, an issue there. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. The PA. Yeah. Could come up.
This one?
Yeah, that one. This is necessary for us to GA with CSI driver reports. We have the ability to get, we have a lot of integration with with Kubernetes in our driver, in the E3 driver that we have, and we get information from the PVC, the labels that for example, the name the user puts on the PVC. We take those annotations as labels and we pass them down to our driver. But now that we use CSI, we don't have that anymore. So we need a way to get that information from provisioner into the context. And I point out right there, it's not very hard. It's just we just gotta get it passed in. Like the function just uses nil to pass in for like get sequence. So
okay, so today hello?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I just want to get this started again. I need to follow up where I was.
Okay, sure. Because I think we have the ability to specify a PVC namespace for secrets that gets passed into mount. So I think this first one should be covered.
Yeah, the promise is not done through the provisioning of the, when you first create the volume, it's not passed in. That's the problem. When you mount it, it's passed in.
Okay.
I would like it when you create the volume, when the provisioner calls the provisioner for CSI create volume.
Okay. I think there was another request for this. Like how but you said you only need this for mount, so why would you need it passed in for creation?
No. On mounts, it's where it does it. We need it in creation. That's what I'm trying to say there. If you click on mounts, it shows you that that's where it's doing it. See, it says we would like to have this.
On creation. Does that mean you need it also on deletion?
No, we only need it in creation so that we can, I'll give you a very simple one. We have an ability to have per user secrets also. So we need the per user secret to say, I am allowed to create a volume, right? On the system. And so we need in the creation to check the access and permissions to determine if this user can create a volume or not. But we can't get that information unless they give us their token, which is in a secret, on creation.
Okay. I think that makes sense. So there was actually another issue sort of related to this, and where is it here?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
There is another issue related to this, and I discussed a bit with Jordan on this topic, and Jordan thinks that it can be feasible to have a per PVC namespace secret for creation. However, we cannot offer it for deletion because it's possible that whole namespace gets deleted. And the secret won't exist anymore. So I think this issue is turning into a feature request for PVC namespace on creation, and I think that's exactly the same thing that you are asking for.
Yep.
Okay. Let me just reference it here.
Yep. So on deletion, that would mean that if I don't have access to delete to create a volume, I could delete somebody else's volume.
No, I don't think so.
I need to figure out how I can avoid that.
So by deleting a volume, you need to delete the PVC. Right? So if you were allowed to create the PVC, then you should be allowed to delete it.
That's right. Were you saying that the namespace will be gone?
The namespace, like someone might delete the whole namespace, that will delete the pod, and that will delete the PVC, and it will delete any secrets.
Oh, I see what you're saying. But if they delete the namespace, I see. But okay, thank you. I have to figure out what that situation could, what this situation would happen with the volumes in that case in the backend, in the storage system.
But if you need a secret to create a volume, when you delete the volume, you also need a secret to delete it, right? You need to pass that to your driver, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure, if somebody deletes the namespace, what does that mean to our storage system?
Yeah, the problem there is that like if your secret is a per namespace secret and you just wipe the whole namespace, then you won't have the secret at deletion time.
I think then what will happen is our storage system will deny the deletion of the volumes and they will stay there. And then they will have to use our APIs to delete it with the right token. That makes sense.
Potentially, yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, but Louis, you have to be aware that the proposal currently is to only support secrets during creation. So your driver will never get a secret on delete because that's not what Louis, what the CEO suggested.
Yeah, what I'm trying to think is that maybe we need it on both to do the right thing. Because even delete has the context and secrets in the CSI call. We just need to get passed in by the CO.
Yeah, but they are not going to get, the current proposal is to not have secrets in delete, never.
But that sounds like a mistake to me.
Like we can't pass in delete secrets on delete because the secret might not exist.
We could. It's basically the argument that I've also had a look at that because I see a need for that also. The argument is that it's too easy for a user to shoot himself into the foot by allowing him to use or to rely on secrets for delete if they are in the namespace. So the whole system is set up so that this particular use case can't be implemented, which is of course a way to avoid the problem, but it also avoids people taking advantage of that particular feature if they need it and if they want to use it and are careful about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think maybe let's bring this to another discussion time. Maybe I'm going to say, I realize it's almost the end of the meeting, but I just wanted to say that let's bring it up, let's start discussing it, because I feel that per call secrets is very important.
Okay. That's fine. Let's, if you want to call a meeting to discuss this, we should invite Jordan to it because I think he's like the sort of expert in this area.
Yeah, Louis, if we can come up with a situation or with a description of how a user recovers from accidentally deleting the secret, that might help to convince Jordan that this is worthwhile supporting.
Oh yeah, so that was pretty easy. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. Anything else someone wants to bring up? All right. Then we will call it a meeting then. See you guys on Wednesday.
Take care, guys.
Bye.